I'm trying to beat Honor Mode in Baldur's Gate 3 by using ridiculous, cheesy, or just plain stupid strategies. And with Acts 1 and 2 already crushed with an absurd variety of strategies, I'm now taking on Act 3 with all new tactics, including an accidental discovery that has Lae'zel floating in the sky like some kind of goddess while she rains arrows down from above. So sit back, relax, maybe strap yourself in because this video is going to get out of control in a hurry. The first thing I did in Act 3 is shove a ton of Mind Flayer parasites into Ricky's brain because the more powers we have, the better. Then we rushed straight over to the Circus of the Last Days just for Carlock.
A circus! Can we go?
I bribed my way in and Carlock approved, although, alright, we aren't here just for Carlock. There are a lot of good reasons to visit the circus, and the Wheel of Wonders is our first reason. We gave the wheel a spin, and unfortunately, we didn't win the jackpot, so we gave it another spin, and another, and another, and another. We spun this wheel about a dozen times, raking in a massive amount of silly, quirky items, one of which is going to help us develop a wacky combat strategy to break a fight later in this video. Ricky commissioned a statue to be built of himself, requesting it to be completely in the nude. Now, obviously, I've got to blur it for YouTube reasons, but it's a good-looking statue, I can assure you. Missing a bit of color, though. Luckily, there's a fix for that. By changing your explicit content settings, you can trick the game into adding full color to your statue, and this statue actually does serve a purpose. It grants the Sweet Stone features buff to Ricky, so he is permanently blessed for the rest of this game. Our last stop in the circus was completely essential. We had to buy some face painting kits because I'm about to pull off one of the most ridiculous fights ever, and I thought it would be amazing if my whole party had war paint applied before we get started. Now this right here is Orin in disguise. You can tell by examining and just looking at that legendary action. A long time ago, I discovered that you can cast Contagion on Orin while she's disguised, and it permanently debuffs her, making her so weak that you can kill her by throwing rafts. But back then, I tested another tactic that I didn't end up using until now. You can get Orin to stick around in Rivington by using Contagion Mindfire to befuddle her. Orin vanishes after the first cast, but you can find her just a short walk away, disguised once again, but this time her disguise is even less believable because my Contagion is setting in. And once it fully sets in, she enters into combat with me. All it takes is one smack for Orin to reveal herself, but this time, she doesn't leave. She's supposed to poof away from me right now, but she is far too confused to know that this isn't the right time to fight me, so we're gonna go ahead and have a little fun together. I can use an infinite movement speed exploit with Aspect of the Elk, and I can just take Orin anywhere I want by carrying her around as an improvised weapon. Since she's immune to death, there's just one place I need to take her, and that requires me to charge straight through the South Span checkpoint, which the guards didn't really appreciate. But it's my turn and I have infinite movement speed, so the guards don't matter. By the way, right-clicking while carrying her as an improvised weapon lets me cancel the attack, and that's how I'm doing it over and over again without burning through all of my action points. I got far enough away from the guards for them to drop out of combat, and I continued down the street until finally I was at the bridge to Worm's Rock Fortress. I threw a potion of Featherfall at Orin, and then I failed my athletics check to toss her off the bridge. Rip. It's fine though, there's nowhere for her to go. I threw Orin off the bridge and then slowly moved her closer and closer to the back entrance of the fortress. And Orin was a good sport and even did her part, jumping up to chase me along the way. I ran her the rest of the way, dropping her off at the back door to Worm's Rock Fortress, and Shadowheart used telekinesis to pull Orin up to the top, although I suspect she would have just climbed up on her own if I'd given her the chance. Then Ricky ran her into Worm's Rock Fortress, and the guard was just completely uninterested in our shenanigans. I opened the door so I could see into Gortash's coronation, and this dude's just quivering in fear, which, I mean, he's honestly right to be scared, especially if he heard what happened to Ketheric in Act 2. I ran Orin in and dropped her off right in front of Gortash, but he was still cowering like a baby, so I yeeted Orin at Gortash to finally kick this party off for real. I decided it wasn't fair if Orin was the only one that was confused, so I used Contagion Mindfire on Gortash as well, so he'd be on equal footing with her. It just takes 3 turns to set in, and with that, Shadowheart has done her job for this fight, and I need Ricky to find a good place to hide where his enemies can't get to him. I found a great spot and tucked him into a corner where the patrolling Steel Watcher wouldn't see him. Just barely, but it works. So from here, it was time to just hit end turn and see what happens. To my disappointment, Orin just stood around on her turn doing nothing. But I am not ready to give up just yet. Shadowheart needs to die so that my enemies don't have any other targets to focus on, and they just kind of ran around doing nothing for several turns, but after 3 turns, Gortash's contagion finally finished setting in, and I literally put exclamation points in my notes because Gortash fired an attack at Orin. Of course, he missed the attack, so it was kind of anticlimactic, but Gortash has proven that he's capable of shooting at Orin, so now I just need to find a way to get Orin to attack him back. Gortash kept on taking shots at Orin, and if this keeps up, he will eventually drop her to 0 hit points. As much fun as it would have been for me to spend the next 8 hours watching enemies pass their turns, I decided it would be infinitely more fun to blow them all up, so I loaded Carlock up with over 3,000 pounds of explosives, and I sent them over to Ricky and had him set up a big boom. The explosion was so satisfying that I decided to give the same treatment to basically everybody else on the battlefield that wasn't named Gortash or Orin. I put a bunch of bombs in a backpack and blew them up, which was kind of lame actually, but I basically used every explosive that I had to help move this fight along. And each turn, Gortash was shooting at Orin, dealing more and more damage. The issue here though is that Steel Watchers are really tanky and they have high dexterity, so even with all my explosives, they were pretty much doing just fine. This fight literally took me hours to set up and do the whole thing, and you're not going to watch me run around slapping Steel Watchers for hours, so here's a quick montage of me cleaning up the fight so we can just focus in on Gortash and Orin. With the battlefield all cleaned up, my party joined the fight and Gortash has turned his attention towards us. And Orin was still doing nothing on her turn, but that is about to change. I turned Will and Ricky invisible and Shadowheart cast Sanctuary on herself, leaving my entire party untargetable. And finally, Orin has punched Gortash. I guess that maybe if Orin's only target is protected by Sanctuary, then she'll go up and punch Gortash in frustration. But this has been an extremely long battle and Shadowheart is like, she's out of spell slots. She used her last spell slot to cast Sanctuary again. And while I technically could leave combat, go respec at Withers, get all my spell slots back, it felt a little bit more authentic to play this out a different way. I brought my whole party into combat and I had Shadowheart run away because during the fight we had leveled up. And with this level up, I gained 1 more level 5 spell slot.
Whoa! Whoa!
And that is all I'm going to need. I cast Contagion Slimy Doom onto Gortash, and this guy's constitution is so bad that he'd literally need to roll 3 nat 20s in a row to resist it. Orin was reduced to 0 hit points from Ricky's throw, but she's not able to die at this point in the game. So we moved the fight into the hallway behind Gortash's throne, and this is Gortash's final turn in combat. And honestly, it wasn't bad. He blasted us with a dazzling ray, but Contagion Slimy Doom has just finished setting in. And now whenever Gortash takes damage, he's going to get stunned and lose his next turn. So we're going to beat him to death with Orin's immortal body. Orin was completely on board with the plan, standing up and punching Gortash to add a little damage. And if you're familiar with Orin's personality, then you know that she's probably actually loving this. In fact, I bet there's nothing that turns her on more than knowing that her body is the weapon that will lead to the death of Gortash. Based on the story for this game, it shouldn't even be possible for Orin to fight Gortash. She tried to turn invisible at one point, but Carlock just threw Ricky at her location to reveal her so we could continue smashing her body into Gortash again and again and again, and bam, pow, smash, slap, kersplat, punch, and finally a critical hit to end the fight. Unfortunately, Orin vanished at the end of the fight, which was really a bummer because I could have actually knocked her unconscious and looted her armor, and then I wanted to throw her in the ocean a couple times just for fun, but oh well, I got what I wanted here. Since I've got Carlock in the party, she was over here looking at Gortash dead, and it just kind of hits a little differently with the face paint on.
Am I fucking missing something? I'm dying. I'm going to die. Meow, 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 meow. Because the person I trusted the most gave me away to the devil!
I've always hated this place. Stupid fucking gigantic bridge or whatever. Love you.
And I've also got Will in the party, and we just killed his dad in this fight, which, you know, he wanted to talk to me, which I knew was going to be rough.
You painted the audience hall with my father's blood.
Painted. Amusing choice of word, my friend. After that, Will and I needed to repair our relationship a little because that joke was in very poor taste. So we set out to defeat the great dragon Ansur together. I have Will built as a paladin so we can smite this mighty beast and take comfort in the large, satisfying damage numbers. Will engaged in a quick, a little inappropriate soul bond with the dragon before preparing for battle. Ricky's job here is to support Will in this fight, so I cast Planar Binding on the Water Myrmidon to take one enemy off the board, which was definitely the right call because the other one was giving Will a beating. And my Myrmidon went over and attacked Ansur and was retaliated on, and then Will got to work with his Divine Smite. Eventually, we killed the hostile Myrmidon, but poor positioning got Ricky attacked, losing concentration on the spell that was controlling the second elemental. So I decided that it was time to take the dragon off the board for a bit with a Glyph of Warding Sleep. While Ansur slept, Will finished off the second Myrmidon, leaving him free to turn his full attention towards the sleeping dragon, and Will has a 100% chance to hit with a guaranteed critical strike because of the sleep condition. Better yet, Ansur can't even retaliate with his legendary action Breath Attack when he's waking up from his nap, although he can retaliate if I decide to attack him again. So Ricky just put the dragon back to sleep, and Will woke him up with another critical hit for nearly 100 damage. Then I had Will use a silly exploit where if you cast Vow of Enmity on yourself, it gives you advantage on all attacks no matter who you're targeting. And Ricky just kept putting Ansur back to sleep over and over before he could start his turn, and Will kept waking him up with a critical hit smite, as well as sometimes a follow-up attack if I felt like it. Since Ricky's an Abjuration Wizard, casting Glyph of Warding over and over is building his stacks so that his Arcane Ward can protect Will from a ton of damage from these counterattacks. We kept it going another turn, casting Sleepy Time on the dragon, waking it up with a critical hit smite, but that was Will's last spell slot. Since Will always wakes the dragon up with a critical hit, he gets to make another attack as a bonus action thanks to the feat Great Weapon Master. And Ricky is stacked up to 20 on his Arcane Ward now, which reduces Ansur's damage by 20, and then it gets cut in half again because Will has lightning resistance from a ring that he's wearing. When Ricky finally got down to his last spell slot and put Ansur to sleep, Will had enough damage to drop the dragon to 0 hit points, activating his final defense mechanism, Stormheart Resolve. He's about to blast this entire arena, so we just ran to cover, let him blast the whole battlefield before Will charged back in to finish off this undead dragon for good. The weapon you can loot from Ansur is insanely strong, and I decided to let Will have a little fun with it to finish blowing off some steam. I mean, come on, his dad just died. Give him a break. He went back to the circus and spun Akabi's wheel, but this time we stole Akabi's mage hand ring that he uses to cheat the spin with, so Will won the jackpot.
Possible.
Then he just roamed around the jungle, butchering anything in his path, and claimed the legendary trident Nirulna as his prize. And I'm just about ready to head to the lower city, but since we killed Gortash immediately, all of Worm's Rock Fortress is hostile, and I hope you won't mind if I just take a moment to play like a sweaty power gamer and just butcher everything in sight. From all this combat, my party reached level 11 and we headed to the lower city. I changed up my party a bit, bringing Astarion and Lae'zel back into the mix, but this first fight Ricky is going into alone. And I have Ricky built as a monk right now, and I've put the Maul hammer Raft in his hands. I looted this way back in Act 1, and it causes thunder damage whenever I jump. Thanks to Step of the Wind Dash, my jump no longer requires a bonus action, so I can just leapfrog around the battlefield dealing damage. And this strategy is actually made even better by just using the Illithid's ability to fly. For some reason, flying counts as jumping. So I can just fly around blasting enemies and kill this fucker Dolor before he can dimension door away. I hate this guy. Look, I just hate him so much. I don't want to chase this guy, so I decided to use this completely busted strategy to just finish the fight without giving him a chance. I stand by it 1,000,000,000%. Hammercraft is also pretty satisfying to use on low health enemies like rats, but after that I put it away for good and I prepared to fight some Gith Yankee with a very very goofy hit and run strategy. Ricky's going to wipe these Gith Yankee out with just one item and a lot of cheese. The boots of very fast blinking that I won from the circus allow me to Misty Step anytime I want, but it leaves all my clothes behind. So I just didn't bring any clothes with me in the first place. With Shadow Step, my monk can teleport from one shadow to another, so I've actually got multiple teleportation abilities to use against these Gith Yankee. So all I've got to do is butcher a Gith Yankee, then use my insanely high mobility to teleport away and just leave the area through the door. Plus, I just leveled up to 12 because I might have slaughtered most of the Steel Watchers in the city off camera just for fun, so I slaughtered the other portal channeling Gith Yankee, then teleported back to safety, and I just kept killing Gith Yankee until all the weak ones were dead, and I escaped and short rested to top off my key points. For some reason, these Gith Yankee stubbornly remained neutral, so I talked to them to get them to be permanently hostile, and now that they're hostile, I can surprise them with attacks from sneak mode. This gives me an extra turn to attack before I need to escape, and I used it to drop all the remaining Gith Yankee except for the strongest one. I made my escape for the final time before returning to start pounding away at that last enemy, and they are very tanky, especially since they can parry one of my attacks, so I just kept using teleportation to flee over to the doorway and end my turn. They used their entire turn to chase after me, and I punched them twice before teleporting super far yet again, and after doing this a couple more times, I won the battle without ever really giving my opponents a chance to fight back. Ricky's going to take on one more fight by himself, but not as a monk anymore. If you watched my Act 2 video, you know that I used Death Ward in a silly way to get all my action points back multiple times in a turn to kill the shambling mound. However, I have since evolved the strategy to be a god tier exploit that grants me infinite action points. I do need at least one ally in this fight though, so I summoned Shovel to accompany me.
Call me when the fisting starts.
All right, but first I need you to drink this elixir of vigilance, okay? Shovel's initiative is at +8, and Ricky is also at +8, which is perfect. Ricky drank his own elixir, but he chose to go with Bloodlust, and then he used Transfuse Health over and over until he was down to just 1 HP. I equipped a bunch of powerful spells, and Shovel and I are ready to fist the entire Murder Tribunal with the power of death and stripping. First up was going to be these 3 Death Knights, and the key to this strategy is an exploit using the Illithid power Freecast. It lets me cast spells without using a spell slot. So I cast Death Ward, which is going to bring me back to life if I die, and the only equipment that Ricky is using in this fight is the Ritual Dagger, which allows him to damage himself as a bonus action. So whenever I kill myself with Blood Sacrifice, Death Ward brings me back with all of my action points refreshed, plus my Elixir of Bloodlust even gave me an extra action point for getting a kill on my turn, even though it was me that I killed. It also gave me 5 temporary health, which is really irritating for this strategy, and for reasons that I can't even begin to explain, taking off my clothes refreshes the cooldown of Freecast, allowing me to cast Death Ward again without using a spell slot. Then I can just take off my shoes to Freecast again and kill myself with Cloud of Daggers, which has enough damage to cut through the 5 temporary health I gained from the Elixir of Bloodlust. This once again brings me back to life with all of my action points refreshed, and I put a potion of speed on the ground and let Shovel attack it, which is bringing Ricky up to 3 action points now. With all these action points, I can use one action to just put some clothes back on, which also refreshes Freecast, and I can use Death Ward again, and I can kill myself and come back with all 3 action points fully refreshed. I can do this infinitely. I have infinite action points. And in a turn-based game, there's really nothing more powerful than infinite action points. There is literally nothing these Death Knights can do to stop me. I can cast Chain Lightning on them as many times as I want, and I can end the entire battle before they can make a move. In fact, the only moves they made were just getting knocked around by my lightning spells because I chose to be a Tempest Cleric because I thought it would be fun to knock people around with lightning. So I headed on into the Murder Tribunal to tell Sarevok about my overpowered strategy. Except here's the deal, I can't resist overpowered items, so I had to become an unholy assassin first. I obliterated Valyria and was bathed in blood, reborn as an unholy assassin, and I shoved all the best loot the merchant had into a pouch and exploited it over into my own pouch. Then I told Sarevok the bad news. It's time to die. He drew his sword as if that's going to help, and it is time to start the fisting. When I discovered that this strategy worked, I liked it so much that I actually had to go and make a standalone video about it before finishing my ridiculous strategy series. Because it was just too good. It was really fun basing the entire playthrough around the evolution of that exploit throughout the game. But as fun as this strategy is, this is a ridiculous strategies video that has a lot of extremely exciting strategies still on the way. And that means that my Ritual Dagger's role in this video came to an end when Sarevok was slain. What a way to go though. 1 second you're alive and the next you're halfway across the room dead while some asshole sits on your throne. Now, of all the strategies in this video, the most surprising outcome was facing off against Lorroakin. Something interesting about Lorroakin is that he's not actually a very powerful wizard. The only thing that makes him strong in this fight is his elemental allies and the elemental retort ability that they give him. So I decided to build a tower of crates because I have a very wacky strategy to try, but what actually ended up happening was far better than I could have predicted. Once my tower of crates was basically at the ceiling, I prepared to throw my poo scraper dagger at Lorroakin, which is going to force him to switch places with me thanks to the dark displacement gloves that I bought from Popper at the circus. When Lorroakin was standing at a spot Lae'zel had a clear line of sight to, I attacked, and amusingly, Lae'zel was actually too high to get into the combat, so I walked her down a little bit to get back into combat and then sent her back up to the top of the Tower of Crates. Then I had Astarion throw a potion of speed at Lorroakin, and I did not expect this to trigger Lorroakin's elemental retort, but thankfully Astarion just barely survived. Then I threw another potion of speed to make Lorroakin lethargic. He can't use actions, bonus actions, or reactions anymore, and he's also going to automatically fail any dexterity saving throws. I sent Astarion up the box tower because he has one more job before he can end his turn. Then Lae'zel chucked the poo scraper dagger, which forced Lorroakin to swap places with me, and this is where things went differently than expected. My strategy for this fight was that I was gonna drop Lorroakin from the sky, dealing massive fall damage. But when Astarion picked up the box Lorroakin was standing on, nothing happened. He's literally just floating there, and I genuinely thought he would fall. I was even going to Misty Step back up to the top with Lae'zel and swap with him again to drop him twice in one turn. I tried shooting him with Lae'zel's bow to see if that would just like knock him loose somehow, but no, he's just floating there. So Lae'zel turned invisible to hide out while I tried to decide what to do from here, and Astarion got downed. This guy's just floating. So I thought, what happens when he takes his turn? Maybe he's gonna fall then. But he didn't. He cast Mirror Image and then just ended his turn. So I decided to throw my poo scraper at him again to see what happens, and now Lae'zel is floating in the sky. Like she's just up in the sky, floating. So I did the most logical thing that I could. I used my bow to shoot down the Tower of Crates, so now absolutely nothing can get anywhere near me. Then I threw my Nirulna Trident at a Water Myrmidon, but it saved on the dexterity saving throw, so we didn't swap places, and Crank shot at me twice and Lorroakin cast a spell on me, so I decided that I should probably put some armor on and prepare for a very different fight than the one that I was prepared for. I put on the Armor of Persistence so that Lae'zel would be super tanky, and Crank missed his next 2 attacks. Strangely, one of the elementals healed Astarion, who was immediately fireballed back down by Lorroakin, and this destroyed all the remaining crates. The elementals don't seem to have anything with enough range to even attack me, so I decided to take down Crank first. I threw my trident to swap myself down, and then I threw it up again to swap back up to the top, and I was kind of in shock while this whole fight was happening, but I kind of snapped out of it right here, and I realized that I should stop throwing weapons because I might lose my high ground if I'm not able to get them to fail a dexterity saving throw. If I wasn't in shock and I was thinking more clearly, I would have just taken off the gloves, but I was really bewildered and I had no idea how I wanted to play this fight. Lorroakin tried to hit me with a spell and missed, and I decided to use a little cheese to swap the Titan String bow into Lae'zel's hands without wasting her action point, and then I opened fire on Crank. And I'm literally too high up in the sky for anything to target me except for Lorroakin, who's just using Chromatic Orb and honestly missing most of the time. But even Lorroakin would sometimes just stand in a spot where he thought that he couldn't target me and he would just say something nonsensical. So I literally just started raining attacks down on my enemies, taking Crank down first so he'd stop shooting at me, then the Water Myrmidon, and then the Fire Myrmidon. Occasionally Lorroakin would land some damage, but Lae'zel could just drink a big potion and be fine. She cannot die up here, there's just not enough damage for it to happen. I killed more and more enemies, and Lorroakin finally stopped attacking. I think he literally ran out of spell slots. I killed the final elemental and attacked Lorroakin twice, and with no more elementals, he can't use elemental retort anymore. He asked for me to just get this over with, and so I killed him from my god tier vantage point in the sky, and my Dark Urge got the inspiration How Far They Fall, which would have been really funny if my original strategy had actually worked. To finally get down, Lae'zel misty stepped to the ground and took a seat on Lorroakin's throne of books, having earned it with her ridiculously overpowered combat strategy. Up next, I've got an amazingly ridiculous strategy plan that's going to help Astarion kill Kazador. But first, I wanted to get him a ridiculous weapon to use, so I went to the basement of Stormshore Tabernacle to steal an amulet from their vault. This causes me to get cursed with Castigated by Divinity, and when you remove this curse, a diva spawns and attacks you. By killing this diva, there's a fun little exploit you can do to get its weapon. You just pick up the diva's corpse and then search your inventory for diva mace, and you will find it. If you equip it, you can keep it forever, and this weapon is special because it deals 4d8 radiant damage, which is absurdly strong. I rebuilt Astarion as a Paladin of Vengeance, which I've maybe overused a little in this series, but it just felt so appropriate to use against Kazador. I put Astarion into position in a little room under the stairs, and Kazador is going to die in this room. Shadowheart flooded the room with sunlight because Kazador is gonna hate that, and Lae'zel and Ricky are ready to do their part to get Kazador to his VIP room. Normally, Kazador kidnaps Astarion when this fight starts, but I'm gonna go ahead and play the Uno reverse card and kidnap Kazador. Lae'zel started the battle attacking before listening to too much nonsense from this guy, and she drank a potion of speed and picked up Kazador and ran him over towards Ricky. Then, Ricky cast Arcane Gate, which creates a portal that anybody can travel through to teleport. And what's fun about Arcane Gate is that characters will auto-path through it, which means I can pick up Kazador and use him as an improvised weapon to travel a massive distance with almost no movement speed. Then I just ran Kazador the rest of the way over to Astarion and slammed him down. Ricky followed through the Arcane Gate and then just stopped concentrating on it so nothing else can use it to follow us. Kidnapping complete. Mission accomplished. Kazador hates sunlight, and he's gonna take 20 radiant damage whenever starting his turn in it. And I don't really know what knocked Kazador prone here, to be honest, but I landed a critical hit right after and then smashed him 3 more times to bring this guy down to 109 HP before he could even take a turn. Of course, when he did take his turn, it started with 20 radiant damage from the daylight spell. And then he cast an unimpressive spell on Astarion, and his forces are just trying to dash over here, but they're not gonna make it in time. Astarion delivered a devastating beatdown, tragically leaving Kazador at 3 hit points so he didn't get the final blow. The daylight spell finished Kazador off in the second round of combat while his forces were barely getting to halfway here. And that's a wrap on this fight, that's all it takes. Kazador, he who has kidnapped 7,000 souls, met his end when he was kidnapped and beaten to death in less than 12 seconds of combat time. I decided to talk Astarion out of ascending because he doesn't need that in his life, you know, he needs to just relax and party. Speaking of partying, my entire next battle is going to feature an extremely drunk Carlock. I have created a full build that synergizes with the drunk status effect, with my weapon gaining advantage and a thunder blast, my cloth armor giving me temporary hit points at the start of my turn, and my amulet keeping me drunk longer and healing me. We stopped by the guild hall to purchase a massive amount of alcohol, and then we went to the bank because it's always a good idea to get shit-faced when you're at the bank. Deep in the bank, we had ourselves a hero's feast, and Carlock said she bet she could clear the entire bank battle herself. Everybody else was like, all right, do it then. And Carlock said, okay, buff me up, fam, and received a massive amount of magical buffs. Then she got absolutely trashed before heading into the vaults to deal with the disturbance. Minsk was in here and bust out of a mimic like a total badass before heading out, and now my drunk wild magic barbarian Carlock is going to drunkenly leap around this bank until she's officially saved the day. As a wild magic barbarian, anytime I take damage, I will get a new wild magic effect, which I just think is hilarious for a drunk barbarian build, and my boots let me leap around aggressively, potentially knocking people prone when I land by them. The helmet I'm wearing lets me use menacing attack once per turn to frighten enemies, and if they are knocked prone and frightened at at the same time, they completely lose their turns until the frightened effect ends. But Carlock is wasted, and you can't expect her to focus long enough to finish her enemies off, so she just wandered away and dropped a devastating attack on another enemy before staggering off in a different direction. The head banker didn't make it, probably because his only defender was totally sloshed, and Carlock refuses to sober up now. She kept pounding people to knock them prone and frightened them into staying down. My unpredictable drunken movements make it nearly impossible to hit me. But I wasn't really the best defender of the guards, and they all died except one. But maybe I can save this last guard. I obliterated a Reaper and swung at another guy on the ground, and the last surviving guard told me that this was my last warning. They're not going to tolerate these types of drunken shenanigans in their bank. The guard tried to get away from the crazy drunk that was just leaving thunder in her wake, but I'm going to go where the enemies go. So I tried to use my wild magic surge to shoot a bolt of light from my chest, but my enemy succeeded in their saving throw against the attempt, so I obliterated them with my club, and it seems that the guard has now turned on me. Which means that they're fair game to pick up and smash into an invoker of Baal. I did shut the vault door to try and keep them from getting stabbed to death though. When I opened the door back up next turn, there was an enemy just outside, so I leaped to knock them prone and pounded a deep-seated fear of wine into them before yeeting them into the vault with the guard and shutting the door. And then I just kinda wandered off. My enemies thought they could hide from me with invisibility, but they underestimated the power of drunken innovation. I smacked the bank guard, dealing thunder damage to the invisible enemies to reveal them, so I can now scare the shit out of them with menacing attack. I took a hit and got a magic wild surge that sprouted vines all around me, and I'm basically still at full health. I drank some Baldur's grape to top off my health and keep my buzz going before carrying the guard back into the action and slapping them to reveal my enemies again. You just can't hide from my drunken thunder waves. With a little wild magic, I teleported away and attacked a candle to reveal another invisible enemy, and these guys are super determined to hide from me, but it literally just won't work. After that, I moved a chair over, smashed it to pieces to reveal the Reaper and annihilate them. Then I leapt back over to knock another dude prone, frighten him, yeeted him across the room to kill an invisible guy, took some damage, triggering another wild magic surge that retaliates on anybody that hits me, and this guy took some force damage from that before turning invisible, so I just dragged another chair over to reveal him and smash him to finally end this battle. When Carlock sobered up, she looked around to see that everybody in the bank was super dead, but hey, she won the bet by clearing this place out by herself while completely wasted. We kept the party going for just a little while longer with a fully alcoholic long rest, and everybody was hungover as fuck in the morning. Jaheira was not impressed with Carlock's ability to save the guards in the bank, and today we're going to rescue Minsk, so we went ahead and put Astarion on the team for a little bit of a sneakier touch. High-level rogues are really good at succeeding on ability checks thanks to reliable talent, and we are going to use greater invisibility to clear out everybody but Minsk from the next area. Unless, of course, Jaheira can manage to reason with him and solve this diplomatically.
Flop all you wish, little fish. But Minsk has caught you!
Negotiations have broken down and the diplomatic option has failed. Plan B it is. Greater invisibility doesn't get removed when you attack as long as you succeed on a stealth check, and Astarion is not going to fail. My enemies can look for me all they want, but they aren't going to find me. That being said, the difficulty class for these stealth checks keeps going up. It's at 18 now, which is an easy pass. I rolled a 32 on it. But after another murder, the skill checks made their way up to 21. So I just went ahead and had Jaheira use Pass Without Trace to add plus 10 to my stealth checks to make sure that I can't fail. I managed to kill Roa Moonglow just barely before my greater invisibility ran out of time, and Astarion ran back over to Ricky to get a fresh spell, which also resets the difficulty class on the stealth checks. This is no longer a turn-based game. I can just massacre my enemies in real time. Although turn-based mode does still make it a lot easier to aim my shots on enemies when they're running away. The difficulty check was up to 25 and I rolled a 45 to pass it. I am in zero danger of being found out. I finished killing the last of my enemies, saving the fake Jaheira for last, and my final stealth check was up to a difficulty class 29 and I rolled a 42. I took a shot at Minsk to soften him up, which wiped out half his health, and then I turned on non-lethal strikes and Astarion knocked Minsk unconscious with a critical hit. Interestingly, my tactics bugged the game out a little bit and Minsk didn't run off to find Boo like he's supposed to, and I tried shutting shoving him to get him back on task, but he didn't like that at all and attacked. So I turned my whole party invisible to disengage that fight, and finally it seemed to work. Minsk ran off to look for Boo, and good thing too, because Boo is an essential part of our next combat strategy. Minsk has officially joined the party. The Zhentarim are making a move on the guild hall, and this fight isn't really challenging. In fact, Nine Fingers is an absolute beast of a soldier that doesn't need any help. But this is about getting justice, and Boo will stop at nothing to get it, just as soon as we find some help smashing down this door. I had Minsk built as a beast companion ranger, so he summoned a bear to help Boo out with this door, and then Boo rushed into combat, opening strong with a critical hit. But just like that, we're out of action points. Surely this isn't the end of Boo's counterattack. Minsk decided to take a quick nap with a potion of angelic reprieve. After all, he always comes up with his best ideas while napping, and taking a nap like this resets the cooldown on his Summon Boo ability as well as his Summon Beast Companion ability. Now Boo can charge back into the fight and attack again. And I summoned a Raven this time because the bear was too big to path through all the narrow pathways and get past all the people in there. It's a crowded guild hall. But now I can attack with Boo, and I can blind an enemy with my Raven before letting Minsk take a little nap and summon them right back to do it all over again. This strategy is only limited by the number of potions of angelic reprieve I have, and I stocked up on them in Act 2. Little by little, my Raven was blinding every enemy in the room, while Boo was focusing on dealing damage and finishing enemies off. With every single enemy in the room blinded before they could even take their turn, it is now experiment time. Because they're all blinded, I can run all the way up to here before I even get put into combat with anybody, which means I can jump my larger beast companions into the fight, and my bear can disarm enemies when it lands an attack. And I wasn't really sure where I wanted to take the fight from here, but using a boar summon to charge into this nice line of Zhentarim was pretty fun. I decided to run Minsk down onto the battlefield so I could summon creatures a little bit closer to the action, and it worked great at first. But I made a little mistake and accidentally got Minsk into combat. I think it's because I got too close to my own companions that were in the fight, so it pulled everybody into combat. So I guess the infinite companion summon fun is over now, and I decided to just clean house, attacking in whatever way I felt like it to wipe out everything in the room as quickly as possible. Nine Fingers landed the final blow, bringing this battle to a very swift end with 0 damage being dealt to my party or the guild hall members. With Shadowheart leading the way, we made our way over to the House of Grief, and after micromanaging summons for a whole fight, we're ready to take the easy way out on this one. I didn't want to keep listening to Viconia and just attacked her to shut her up, and then Carlock created a wall of thorns and Lae'zel created another. Shadowheart created a blade barrier, and Ricky lit the whole thing up with a wall of fire. I didn't know if they would be able to get through my plus sign of death, but it was time to find out. All right, let's see if they try to run through. Oh my god, they just got deleted. All right, looks like this is going to work out great for me. Anybody that tried to approach was ripped to shreds, and anybody that made it past was just yanked back into it with a black hole. There was just no way for them to fight me against this much area spam, and I watched them fall one after another. Viconia was freaking out, probably because she realized how completely fucked she is right now, and that's it. She died. The House of Grief has officially been conquered. And the House of Hope is up next. Once inside the House of Hope, I made my way to the boudoir to face off against Harlop, which is Raphael's incubus. But I decided I might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone in a manner of speaking, so before the battle could even really get underway, I cast Planner Binding to force Harlop to become my ally. Then I made my way down to fight against the jailers. When I first got into the fight, Harlop didn't join, so I just waited for my spell to time out so I could get Harlop onto the combat queue, and I brought 8 scrolls of Planner Binding with me, so it really doesn't matter if I'm out of 5th level spell slots. My mind-controlled Harlop flew into battle and got Eldritch blasted off the edge, but he's got wings and he cannot die like that. Plus, anytime Harlop takes damage, he uses Ethereal Escape to hide so that they can't follow up with any more attacks. Sadly, Harlop's actual turns were insanely disappointing, just 1 claw attack and that's it. Nevertheless, we continued the strategy and let Harlop scratch an imp each turn before getting blasted off the ledge. It felt like this was going to take forever, so Ricky used the most ridiculous route ever to fly onto the battlefield and blasted the imps with chain lightning so Harlop could focus on these spectators instead. The spectators do quite a bit more damage than the imps, and Harlep is still pathetic. Interestingly, when Harlep became free of my control spell, he summoned all of the imps that would normally join him in battle in his boudoir, and they all looked like they were pathing their way over here, and I'm kind of curious if they would actually manage to get here, but Harlep wasn't able to hang in there long enough to find out, with the imps leaving the combat queue when Harlep died. I finished off the spectators by transforming into a displacer beast and tentacle whipping them to death. Time to piss off Raphael by stealing his favorite hammer. And as a small side note, Hellish Spheres are ridiculously tanky. Like, holy shit, I'm just wailing on this thing and goddamn. I freed Hope by smashing stuff with the hammer I just stole, and it's time to completely and utterly obliterate Raphael.
Down comes the claw.
Sorry, champ, that's not how this one's gonna go. Carlock is in position, Lae'zel is in position, and Ricky flew away from the battlefield, left combat, so he is in position. I summoned Scratch just in case I mess this up somehow and I need him to be able to revive me, but I think I should be fine. The spell Autoluke's conveniently portable freezing sphere is hilarious because a character that is out of combat can turn into a snowball dispenser. These things do big damage and they explode in real time if the character that created them is out of combat. I have a ton of spell scrolls, so I can summon a ridiculous amount of these things and just send them over to an ally and watch as they explode over and over and over, decimating everything in the area. And since I'm an evocation wizard, they don't even hurt my allies. Raphael might be a powerful opponent in a fair fight, but there's literally nothing he can do to fight back against the overwhelming power of cheese. I'm remarkably close to the end of the game, but this is a special fight because I've been preparing for it for the entire playthrough. In Act 2, I acquired the Twist of Fortune Mace, which has a fun ability that deals damage to an enemy based on how much gold they're carrying. The damage type is piercing, so I thought it would be even more fun if I put on the ballast armor to double it, but the question is how much gold will I use? Luckily for me, I don't need to do any math or even make a decision here. I've been using Withers as a piggy bank for this strategy the entire playthrough. I have not pickpocketed Withers, and he has accumulated 21,000 gold for me from all of the respecs I've done this playthrough. I pickpocketed all the gold by rolling a nat 20 on my sleight of hand check. It only took this many tries to get. Then I headed into the Blushing Mermaid and walked up to Captain Grizzly. By examining the captain, you can clearly see that it is Auntie Ethel in disguise. So I reverse pickpocketed 21,000 gold into her inventory. Then she showed me her true colors and poofed away. So I chased her down and I'm ready to finish her off. I killed all of her magic mushrooms first, because otherwise she'll just come back to life, and once I had finally wiped them out, I swapped the mace over to Lae'zel's hands. Okay, my only regret here is that I toggled on non-lethal attacks. It's just a habit that I have to save the child that Auntie Ethel ate, but I kind of wish that I had just done full damage. But all it takes is just one hit and it's over. I did 288 damage plus another 288 thanks to the Aura of Murder for a total of 576 damage. And it's all thanks to the best piggy bank in the world, good old Withers. I appreciate you, buddy. Ricky is ready to end this thing, and all we have to do is kill Orin and then go to the Netherbrain. Ricky's gonna be taking this fight on alone, and I'm heavily outnumbered, but it's not going to matter. I am built as a level 12 Way of the Open Hand monk, which means that after each long rest, I get Tranquility, which grants me Sanctuary. Enemies can't target me directly, and this Sanctuary is permanent until I attack. I flew down to Orin and she immediately started butchering her allies because she is still stricken with Mindfire and befuddled, so she's just attacking whatever she can. I am not an eligible target due to my Sanctuary effect. Each turn, Orin gains the Boon of Ball, which basically just gives her 12 stacks of, oh, look at me, I barely take any damage and I can't get pushed around at all. But again, it's not going to matter. She is going to take care of this problem for me. She started off by butchering her normal allies, but she is even able to take down the Reapers of Ball despite the fact that they also have Sanctuary protecting them. I don't really know why she's able to target them and not me, but I don't need to know. When she finishes killing all these Reapers, she won't be able to gain unstoppable stacks anymore, and that's when my fight against her will begin. There was one last dude running around that ended his turn next to Orin, which was a huge mistake, and then Orin slaughtered the final two Reapers, putting a stop to the Boon of Ball that was giving her those unstoppable stacks. Now it's it's just me against Orin, so I turned into the Slayer to kick this fight off. Now, she's not going to be gaining any more unstoppable stacks because the ritual has been ended, but she still has 12 that I need to take off. So I'm using the Slayer form to take off as many as I can while still trying to avoid getting counterattacked. Although I didn't realize that my ability, Let the Slaughter Begin, would trigger Orin's legendary action, but it did, and she teleported over and just cut through my Slayer form like it was butter. I played the rest of the fight evasively, taking time to heal and trying to limit how many attacks Orin could get on me each turn. I finally removed the last of Orin's unstoppable stacks and ran away. Orin followed me and hit me twice, but this fight is finished. I knocked Orin prone and then used a flurry of blows to push her off the edge, and she is dead. I claimed the final Netherstone, and I am ready to face the Netherbrain with a spectacular strategy planned to finish off this ridiculous playthrough. Now, I wasn't expecting this. I didn't even use inspiration or anything, but I literally got a critical success to dominate the brain. It's not going to matter one way or another, but it still felt good. I decided to free Orpheus rather than side with the Emperor, and Ricky transformed into a full Illithid, and we are ready to liberate this city once and for all. My allies are here to support me in the final battle. I have Daemon, an Owlbear, Floric, Wobrin, Bongle, Mole, Volo, Zevlor, Nine Fingers, Olma, Halsin, and Jahira. I don't really know why Dame Aelin isn't here, but it's fine. I usually just run through this courtyard invisibly because I don't feel like fighting, but Ricky is just gonna go ahead and run through totally clear to see. After all, I'm sanctuary protected. They've got nothing on me, right? Just some idle threats. I was horribly wrong. The spectator frightened and paralyzed me, and apparently intellect devourers can ignore my sanctuary to attack, and goblins can even throw stones at me, because nothing beats magic like a well-aimed rock. Thankfully, the paralyze wore off and I was still alive, so I dashed and took off flying away, and made it to the base of the brainstem, having survived my overconfident and foolish courtyard approach. My party members are all sorcerers for the final fight, and they used every single one of their first and second level spell slots to create more sorcery points. Then I used all those sorcery points to create 7 second level spell slots, which I turned back into sorcery points, which I turned back into spell slots until I was completely out. All it takes now is a potion of angelic reprieve to give me back all of my first and second level spell slots, and when I wake up, I now have 23 second level spell slots. I converted all those back into sorcery points and took another nap, and with just 2 potions of angelic reprieve, I'm at 52 sorcery points and 23 second level spell slots. I have 10 more potions of angelic reprieve per character, but I don't need that many. Instead, I just brought each party member up to 99 sorcery points, so they'll be fully ready for the final fight and can use as much meta magic as they want. There's a dominated red dragon in my path with the Emperor on its back looking like a real piece of shit, and he thinks he's a badass telling us he knows our weaknesses, but he's just an idiot. I started the fight by grouping up in a diamond and putting a potion of speed on the ground, then Orpheus punched it to break it open on my party, but it did miss Shadowheart, so I just used another one and Orpheus threw it to haste Shadowheart and himself. Then I cast Globe of Invulnerability and moved inside. With a sorcerer's meta magic quicken spell, I can cast a spell as a bonus action, so Shadowheart cast Chain Lightning to blast the Emperor, and then with meta magic twinned spell, I can double cast a Scroll of Disintegrate on the dragon and the Emperor at the same time. But let's make this dragon a little easier to hit, shall we? Carlock used True Strike, which inflicted Encrusted with Frost, so the dragon would lose the advantage that it had on dexterity saving throws, plus it added 2 stacks of Reverberation, so this big boy has a -2 on dexterity saving throws. Now it only has a +4 on its dexterity saving throws, so it should be really easy to hit this thing and kill it in one turn. Shadowheart fully disintegrated the Emperor and damaged the dragon, and after a couple more Chain Lightnings from spell slots and scrolls, the dragon was dead before it could make a move. Then I just went and called in literally every single ally that I had at my disposal, and they started swinging and had an all-out brawl on top of this Netherbrain. We had a dragon breathing a wall of fire, an owlbear friend, and the whole fight had far too much going on to comment on all of it. Basically, the story here is that we have the enemy outnumbered because it's just allies littered across the entire battlefield. Ricky used Karsus Compulsion on the Crown, finally breaking his Sanctuary effect, and the final Mind Flayer flew down into the fray and got bombed pretty hard before getting fucking obliterated. We entered the final battlefield against the Netherbrain, ready to use our final ridiculous strategy. Ricky used his action point to equip Kethric's shield, which gives me advantage on dexterity saving throws, and I'm hoping it's going to be enough to survive. My allies all Misty stepped down to the Netherbrain so that I could use this one last ridiculous strategy, and we'll all be here together. Carlock is carrying a lot of weight right now. She is literally filled to the brim with fireworks. Most of the time when people kill the Netherbrain with fireworks, they stand at a safe distance when blowing it up. Not in this playthrough though. I'm going to roll the dice, literally, and see if my monk can succeed enough saving throws to survive the very same explosion that kills the Netherbrain. So yeah, here it is. I've got my my crooked wand of fireballs, and I guess I'll see you on the other side. Okay, my game is very frozen right now. It looks like Shadowheart and Lae'zel are already dead. There we go. Hell yeah, we did it. We survived. We survived the same explosion as the Netherbrain. Fuck yeah. Ricky doesn't want to rule the world. That sounds pretty boring, to be honest. The Netherbrain met its end with a fireworks show for the whole town to see. I hope you enjoyed all of my ridiculous strategies. I want to try this style of video and playthrough in some other games, so if you know of another game that would be a good fit, please let me know in the comment section. Ideally, it would be a game that gives me the freedom to approach combat creatively and also lets me respec my characters easily and often. If you want to check out another one of my ridiculous strategies videos, click here. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.